So you're going to show me how to do it. Oh God, the nerves! I'm already nervous. Now you go to the back, will you? So you're not going to tell me I'm wrong.
3-1-3.
3-1. We do 2-3-1.
Oh.
Yep, we do 2-3-1. Okay. A little bit about the history first. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
First of all, Irish coffee started in about the 1920s, 1930s. Okay. A lot of people think it's much, much older, but coffee really didn't exist in Ireland. If we put whiskey in anything, we would have put it in tea. We would have had it in a hip flask and worked the fields and put the whiskey into tea and drank from that. That's what Irish people would have done. Just after we got independence, we were trying to sell ourselves as a bright new country. We built a big seaplane airport over the other side of the country in Shannon, and we built a beautiful big new port with a restaurant in it, top of the range restaurant, and it functioned and was very, very busy for a very long time. Thanks a million. The problem with the seaplanes, as I'm sure you know, is the weather, and it really did rely on weather. So an awful lot of times the planes that went out that way had to come back in. On this particular evening, or so the story goes, the plane had come from Europe, had stopped at Shannon, and was heading back with a lot of wealthy Americans back over to America. Got about an hour and a half into the journey and had to turn around. Story goes that the pilot radioed in to the restaurant manager and said, you're going to have an awful lot of disgruntled Americans heading your way. They're not very happy. They're cold, tired and wet. So he was trying to think of what to do. It was too late to open the kitchen. All he had was drinks. That's all he could offer them. He decided on coffee, obviously because Americans like coffee better than tea, unlike the Irish. Then he said, I'll put whiskey in it, like the Irish put the whiskey in the tea. Still looked a bit flat. He said, I'll make it look like a Guinness. So we put a bit of cream on top. And that is truly how it started. How you got your whiskey, your coffee, and your cream. The story goes, or so it's told, don't quote me on this one because I don't know how true it is. The gentleman was walking around and everybody was saying how much they liked the coffee and that's lovely coffee. And he said, is that a French coffee? And he said, no, sir. That's an Irish coffee. And that's how it got its name. About 2 years later, 3 years later, the airport closed just because everybody was moving to proper air travel. And a big airport was built in Dublin. One of the gentlemen that were on the seaplane at the time that the Irish coffee was served was a restaurateur in Chicago. He phoned the manager in the Irish port and asked him to come over, and he showed all his staff how to make the Irish coffee, and that's really how it built. That's really how it got its popularity, very much in America, and then made its way back over through us and into Europe, but it definitely got its popularity in Ireland. Okay, so how do we make it? There's loads of different ways. I don't know, where are you all from?
Scandinavia.
Denmark, Scandinavia. So you would have naturally sweet cream as well for the most part, plenty of rain. That means your cream is lighter and the manufacturer then doesn't add sugar into it. Some countries do suffer with a heavier cream because their cream is naturally not as sweet. So it's sweetened, before it's put in the containers. Our cream, as you can see, is nice and light and frothy and has a creamy colour as opposed to a brilliant white colour. Again, that's from the cows being out in the fields and eating the grass all year. It's as simple as that. The fact that it's lighter helps it float on top. What you don't want from your Irish coffee is for the cream to go down through. So if at your last mouthful, you're still getting the cream along your top lip and then the hot coffee along your bottom lip, it's being made correctly. That's the trick. You want the cream to stay floating on top all the time. A few little tricks to that. The main trick is that the weight of the cream isn't weighed down by any sweetening in it. Okay? The way we measure it, a lot of people have lots of different ways. We do the 2-3-1 method. That's 2 sugars, or 2 fingers, I should say, of whiskey, 3 fingers of coffee, and leaving 1 for cream. Zhuzh that up a little bit depending on whether you like a lot of coffee, whether you like a lot of cream. But as a guide and as a quick reference when you're making it, especially if you're going to be making it for quite a lot of people, it works very, very well just to hold a glass and pour. Okay? What whiskey do you use? If you're making an Irish coffee, use Irish whiskey. That's what we say. But again, it really is to taste. If you have a particular brand of whiskey that you know that you really, really love, I would say always make it to taste. It's the same with coffee. If you have a particular brand of coffee that you like, that works well for you, that you use every day, that's the coffee that you absolutely should use. It's really to what your taste is. Whatever coffee you use, make it stronger than you usually would. So add an extra spoon or an extra scoop in when you're making it for your Irish coffee. It should definitely be stronger than what you usually have. Sugar, the sugar is in your whiskey today. I would usually say a teaspoon. And if you take a spoon of sugar in your coffee anyway, maybe put in 2 teaspoons when you're making it yourself. So just, add in an extra little bit. It's the whiskey is bitter, as you know. The coffee is bitter, as you know. There is a slight sweetness to the cream, but really and truly, it's the only sort of sweetness that you like or that you're going to get in the drink. So if you do take a sweet coffee, you should definitely add extra in for your Irish coffee. Does that make sense?